you, Mawahib.
Thank you, Shagun. Hello, everyone. My name is Mawahib Adams. It's an immense pleasure to be given this opportunity to have this brief conversation with all of us today. It's an even greater pleasure to have this opportunity to speak at Nigeria's first Bitcoin-only event. I don't think I've ever met anyone who's as enthusiastic and passionate about Bitcoin like Shagun. He doesn't even want to hear you mention any other token. It's a little annoying, but it's contagious at the same time. So, but yeah, you guys are doing great work, and we hope to see what this evolves into in the coming years. So the other day, I was scrolling on social media, and I came across this video. And this guy, I think he's an American journalist, John Ehrlichman or something, talks about finance and stuff. And he was just going around asking people one question. And he asked about, I counted, he asked about 15 women and a total of 8 men, one question, the same question. And the question was, which would you rather have, 1 Bitcoin or tickets to go see Taylor Swift? You've seen that video? It pissed me off a little bit. But 8 men, 7 men said that they would take the Bitcoin. I mean, if you ask that kind of question in a room like this, the answer would be very obvious. But 15 women, 13 out of those 15 women said that they would pick Taylor Swift tickets over 1 Bitcoin. And so before I got mad, I said, okay, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe Taylor Swift tickets are now like collectibles or like baseball cards that appreciate over time or something. So I went to Google and I checked, and the cheapest Taylor Swift ticket at the time was around $400, and the most expensive was $12,000+. And again, I'm mind blown, and I'm saying, how are these women picking something that's just above 10% of the value of Bitcoin today, and no one can compute the value, the percentile of the value 5 years from now? What are the TA people saying Bitcoin would be by 2030? Exactly. Exactly. And so what percentage of 1 million would $12,000 be? But again, as funny as that video was, it was just an eye-opening experience to the fact that there's a lot of, I don't want to use the word ignorance, it's kind of harsh, but there's a lack of information surrounding the Bitcoin subject, but especially a lack of information when it comes to women. And, sorry, next slide, please. And today's conversations have been great. We're talking about Bitcoin, we're talking about its usefulness, we're talking about ways we can innovate in the space, ways we can build in the space. And these are all the kinds of conversations that we should be having, but there's one more conversation I just want to, kind of push, and that's, how do we get more women to access Bitcoin? Why? Because historically, even in the traditional finance sector, women are usually marginalized, right? And so women more often than not face systemic barriers when it comes to accessing traditional finance infrastructures, when it comes to accessing credits, when it comes to even traditional finance like information and investment opportunities and things of the sort. So Bitcoin is still early, I think we would all agree. Yes, it's 15 years old, but if you're looking at the number of people who are holding Bitcoin, I think the last time I checked was around 65 million. And so we're a world of 7 billion, and so there's still a very long way to go. And I call Bitcoin the disruptive asset, right? So for something as disruptive as Bitcoin, it would be amazing if we get women on board that ship, that train, as early as possible. If while we're beginning to build around this ecosystem, we're beginning to build in the Bitcoin economy, we are building with women in mind, we're building while having women sit at tables where decisions are made, giving the opportunity for them to offer their unique perspective. Because again, I believe that women bring a unique perspective to everything, right? So if women are part or a core part of people building the Bitcoin economy, the advantages or the benefits that I envision are innumerable. And so why women and why Bitcoin? I like statistics, I like numbers. Sadly, Nigeria, Africa, access to very accurate statistics is not really something we have at our fingertips. But I think only about 39% of women constitute Bitcoin holders currently. I can't remember how recent that statistic is, but 39% of Bitcoin holders are women, only 39%. Actually, let me be honest, I was a bit impressed when I saw that statistic. I thought it would be a little lesser. However, I think that there's room for improvement. Why? Because women make up more than 50% of the world's population presently. So there's room for growth, obviously. Now, this statistic is a global one. I don't have the statistics for Nigeria and for Africa. And the conversations that we're having here, the passion we have to push this agenda is for Nigeria first, and then Africa as well. So I don't have the statistic of women holding Bitcoin in Nigeria, but if I were to guess, it might be, I suspect it would be far less than 39%. Now, when it comes to women, I know it won't, not for Nigeria, yeah. When it comes to women holding cryptocurrency-related jobs, including Bitcoin-focused role, the global statistic is sitting, I think, around 26% of women. Again, much room for improvement. If maybe we get, and this is not even an equality conversation, it's just ratios. Women make up over half of the population of the earth. I think if we're trying to push these numbers to at least half, that would be, great. And so 29% of women hold jobs within the Bitcoin economy, within the blockchain space. And then the most disturbing for me was only 6% of women hold leadership positions within this industry, within the sector. Oh, the mic is on. Okay, great. Okay, so only 6% of women are holding leadership positions. So what this tells me is that we only have a small number of women seated at tables where decisions are made, seated at tables where policies are created, policies that will affect the general economy, including the average woman, right? And so, yes, it's staggering, it's, bothersome. We need to get the numbers up. Why? There's a lot of poverty in Nigeria. That has been part of the trending conversation today. And it honestly is very sad, right? However, as much as we're trying to push Bitcoin to fulfill certain agendas, one, helping us hedge against inflation, two, helping us just conquer the TradFi system that has been or has proven so oppressive over the last couple of years, we're all championing that initiative and that conversation. But my agenda here today is, women focused. And so why do I think we need to raise awareness, improve education, access to education, create initiatives for women to be more involved in Bitcoin? Simple and short for the first would be to empower these women, right? To bridge the gap for poverty, to bridge the gap for entrepreneurship, to tap into what I would consider to be a massively untapped workforce. So again, back to the statistic of women accounting for over 50% of people. And so when we're looking for people to build in the space, people to innovate in the space, one of the speakers earlier mentioned how the Gen Z generation would be the ones to innovate heavily. I agree. Now, how do we draw more women to begin to scale in the direction that would allow them develop in this space? How do we get even millennial women to upskill within the space to be able to build in this space when they have not even heard about Bitcoin? When the average woman will probably pick, I don't know, to make it relatable for a Nigerian woman, maybe a Davido ticket over a Bitcoin. And so we need to increase the economic participation through an expanded workforce and entrepreneurship. The second would be for proper wealth distribution and, I would say, poverty eradication. Now, when we talk about, okay, we need every woman out there to know about Bitcoin, this is not limited to young women or women who we think are tech savvy and can open a wallet, operate a wallet, or women who we think can be blockchain developers or anything of the sort. We need to talk to even our not so young women about Bitcoin. Why? The average, what would I say, maybe a middle-aged lady, 55-year-old Nigerian woman, she's not very tech savvy. How can Bitcoin possibly be beneficial to her? Well, there's no point for me to talk to her about Bitcoin. I disagree. And so there was something that Shagun referenced earlier about how if you saved at the top of the year in Naira, your Naira's value at this, we're in December, would currently be, what, 70% off. And so even for the average, yes, about 70% devalued, yes. Now, even if it's the average, not so tech savvy, middle-aged woman, she can save her little earnings in Bitcoin. One thing that I always say about Bitcoin is, as much as it helps us hedge against inflation and things of the sort, Bitcoin also teaches us a degree of patience. Right? It helps to kind of tick away at any form of consumer mindset that we have, because it's an asset that you have to hold. It's an asset that you have to watch, its volatility play out. It goes up and down, but you just have to trust that the logic behind Bitcoin is so solid and so strong that it would not let it go down. So another thing is why empowering women to get involved in Bitcoin, not just for saving, not just for investment, but having conversations that will open up their minds to building in the space, to working in the space, to capturing opportunities in this space, to being entrepreneurs in this space as well, is because studies have shown that when women are empowered financially, they typically would reinvest about 90% of what they earn back into the household. And so what that means is that when women are financially empowered, the home unit has more food to eat, the kids go to better schools, they have access to better health care, right? And so what this does is creates a more stable home unit, and that ripple effect, the more women we have empowered, the effect will ripple into us having more stable societies. In my opinion, poverty is one of the main reasons why we have, I would say, a very topsy-turvy society. There's crime, there's fraud, there's this, there's that. Everyone is just chasing after their next meal, to be honest, right? And so the more stable a society we're able to achieve, when the effects of financial empowerment are able to trickle down to everyone, I believe the better society we're able to create for everyone. I think like several slides down. Does it keep going down? No, like 3. Yeah, okay, so I'm here. So the last one would be, again, the benefits of including women in these Bitcoin conversations are innumerable, but I just, drafted out 4 for us to discuss today. The last would be to get more women involved in policy and advocacy. And so like I mentioned earlier, the statistic is quite disturbing. We only have 6% of women, and this is even a global statistic. I don't want to know what that statistic is for Nigeria and Africa, but the more we get women involved in Bitcoin, educated about Bitcoin, encouraging them to upskill in the sector, become entrepreneurs and things of the sort, the more we're able to have women who are qualified to sit at tables where important conversations are had, to sit at tables where policies are developed, to sit at tables to ensure that women are included, women are considered when or while we are building for Bitcoin. So yes, enough conversation or enough talk about what the problem is and things like that. What can we do about the current situation? So the first and most obvious thing would be to, get more women to access Bitcoin education and Bitcoin awareness. And so that has been something that has been recurring throughout today's conversation, and not to overflog the subject, but it really is the core where everything begins. We need to get women access, easy access, maybe even incentivize the access to education about Bitcoin. Even if, for starters, the education is not in-depth, just getting them to know what Bitcoin is a start. I wish someone told me about Bitcoin in 2011. I wish they just mentioned it to me and, just gave me a quick overview. At least if I didn't get into Bitcoin that early, I only have myself to blame, and not the fact that I didn't know about it. And so we need to spark or start having more Bitcoin-related conversations with, women. We need to incentivize, we need to push, we need to create initiatives and programs that are designed especially for women. Like I said earlier, women are usually marginalized when it comes to finance-related conversations. And because we're still in early days for Bitcoin, I believe that, it's a very prime opportunity. Secondly, I think what we can do is to leverage advocacy to ensure that, okay, so we're saying we need more women to have access to, education. We need more women to have access to, or to be incentivized, or we need more programs designed around women. There was one of the speakers, I can't remember who it was exactly, but he said, okay, I think it's the Bitcoin politician. He said, one way to really advance the Bitcoin agenda is to get politics involved. And so when there's legislation about a thing, you're able to push it further even more. When we're able to leverage advocacy and get these things that we're talking about that will propel the women Bitcoin movement forward, if it's legislated, it's, it's way easier to implement, it's way easier to access for the average Nigerian woman. And then thirdly will be to encourage female leadership and spotlight on role models. So we do have currently in Nigeria, I believe, a lot of amazing women doing great things in the space. What we need to do more of, besides getting more women to be like that, is to spotlight these women that are building, that are doing amazing things, that are achieving things through this Bitcoin economy. That way more people are inspired and encouraged to, take on the trajectory, or at least it will pique their interest. Okay, so I can see this person doing XYZ exploits in the space. Let me really see what is happening, what kind of innovation is really happening in this space. And that's how the interest is sparked. And then, last slide, please. Lastly would be to build female communities around these initiatives. I know I sound very partial. I'm just talking about women. I'm sorry. I'm not really sorry, but again, because we are constantly marginalized, I feel like a number of us need to come out and, just poke at us to have these conversations or to begin to think in a different direction. I'm willing to bet, like if I took a poll, if I asked the average person, like, who do you have Bitcoin conversations with? I bet a bunch of the men here. I mean, the turnout even just says a lot. I don't think I counted up to 10 women seated here today, apart from the external vendors. And so if I asked the average person, just maybe Mr. Bitcoin politician, although you said you helped about 10,000 people get into the Bitcoin space, what percentage of that 10,000 would you say are women? As women, that's fantastic, 40%. Okay, that's great. That's put a smile on my face, but you're very particular about inclusion. Happy to hear that. And so as enlightened as he and his team are, and they're particular about inclusion, not a lot of people think about these things. We have a lot of things on our minds as Nigerians. First of all, this has been a wonderful year, and everyone is probably more focused on beating and combating the inflation. It might not be for malicious reasons, but the average builder, the average CEO, the average recruiter may not have inclusion at the forefront of their mind, and that's the point why we are having these conversations, just to serve as reminders that we need to have more women-focused things infused in the Bitcoin economy and the Bitcoin ecosystem. And so that brings me to why I'm standing here today. Like Shagun earlier mentioned, we are collaborating to bring or build up this initiative called Nigeria Women Bitcoiners. And the only thing we're trying to achieve is, because this is the three key words that would sum up everything we're trying to do: education, empowerment, and advocacy. We're trying to get Bitcoin education, information about Bitcoin, access to resources that would teach you about Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? How can you leverage Bitcoin, personally? How can you build in Bitcoin? How can you build on Bitcoin? How can you build around Bitcoin? How can you innovate in Bitcoin? And so the goal of the Nigeria Women Bitcoiners is simply to provide free, emphasis on free access to educational resources about Bitcoin. Why? We just want to push women forward, Nigerian women, and eventually we will expand to Africa. The community is open to even non-Nigerians at the moment, but the goal is to push the average Nigerian woman to learn about Bitcoin and to figure out how she can leverage Bitcoin to push her life forward, to push her finances forward, to push her career forward, to push her business forward. How can the average woman selling ginger in the market leverage Bitcoin for cross-border global payments? I use ginger as an example because that is something that's very in demand when it comes to exports. And so we can have a different conversation on how cross-border payments and access to these things have stifled the export economy in Nigeria. But how can the average woman know that, okay, I have this option, to go online? The internet is barrierless. How can I go online and say, hey world, I have ginger to sell, and I can receive payments in Bitcoin? That is the most empowering thing that can happen to a ginger farmer somewhere, in Ogun State or in Kaduna State, for instance. So Nigerian Women Bitcoiners, our goal is simply to do just that. And the challenge I want to give each and every one of us today as we leave is that talk to the women around you about Bitcoin. Talk to your sister, talk to your mom, talk to your girlfriend, talk to your wife, talk to the girl you like. Use this as like an icebreaker or a conversation starter. Talk to them about Bitcoin and tell them if they have interest and you are unable to take up the mantle of teaching them, send them our way, right? We're at Nigeria Women Bitcoiners on all social media platforms. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, we're on X, and they can access links to our community. Like Shagun said, we are currently about 800 women strong. We were 1,000 at some point, but some people would always fall off, right? And I want to give accurate statistics, but we're currently around 800 women strong, and the goal is for us to, forge ahead and do just that. We had some minor delays in graduating our first cohort, and that's because these first few months we've really just focused on sinking our foundations and getting a structure on ground that we would run with. But 2025, I would say, is our year, and it's the best time for anyone around you, female, to, interact with us to get access to Bitcoin education. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure having this conversation. And then once again, thank you, Shagun. Like I said earlier, your passion for Bitcoin is contagious.